The restaurant fell silent as Elise Harrington stood up from her table, tears streaming down her face. What she was about to do would change not just one life, but dozens. If you've ever wondered whether one moment of compassion can ripple through generations, stay with me until the end of this story. And if it touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories that remind us of our shared humanity. 20 minutes earlier, Elise had been enjoying a quiet dinner with her 10-year-old son, Max, at Billionaire's, the most exclusive restaurant in the city. Getting a reservation typically required months of waiting, but when you're worth $4.2 billion, doors tend to open more easily. "Mom, can I have the chocolate lava cake for dessert?" Max asked, his eyes bright with hope as he set down his menu. Elise smiled at her son. Despite her wealth, she worked hard to raise Max with values that transcended money. "Of course, sweetheart. But remember what we talked about?" Max nodded solemnly. "That we're lucky, and we should always be grateful." "That's right," Elise said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. At 42, Elise had built her tech empire from scratch. Starting with a small software company in her garage 15 years ago, she had transformed it into Harrington Innovations, now a global leader in renewable energy technology. But success had come at a cost. 3 years ago, her husband Michael had died in a car accident, leaving her to raise Max alone while running her company. As they waited for their appetizers, Elise noticed a man and a young girl being seated at a table near the window. The girl, who looked about Max's age, wore a simple dress that had clearly been carefully mended in several places. The man, presumably her father, wore a clean but visibly worn suit. His shoulders were tense as he studied the menu, and Elise recognized the subtle calculations happening behind his eyes, the mental math of someone checking prices against what they could afford. "Is everything all right, Miss Harrington?" The waiter appeared at her elbow with their first course. "Yes, thank you," she replied, but her attention remained on the father and daughter. The girl was looking around the restaurant with wide-eyed wonder, taking in the crystal chandeliers and the white linen tablecloths. When the waiter approached their table, Elise overheard the father order just one entree and a side salad. "We can share, Lily," he said gently to his daughter. "And maybe we can split a dessert too, if you'd like." The girl nodded eagerly, but Elise didn't miss the flash of disappointment that crossed her face before she smiled at her father. "Mom?" Max's voice pulled her attention back to their table. "Who are you looking at?" Elise hesitated, then decided on honesty. "See that man and his daughter? I think they might be having a special night out, but they're being careful about what they order." Max turned to look, then back at his mother. "Like when you told me about how you and Dad used to save up for date nights when you were starting your company?" A lump formed in Elise's throat. "Exactly like that, sweetheart." As their main courses arrived, Elise continued to observe the pair. The father was attentive and gentle with his daughter, cutting the chicken they were sharing into small pieces for her. When the girl accidentally knocked over her water glass, he quickly mopped up the spill with his napkin, reassuring her with a warm smile that made the girl's embarrassment fade. Something about them stirred memories in Elise, memories of her own childhood with a single mother who had worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. Memories of the rare special occasions when they would dress up and go out for a meal, her mother always ordering the least expensive item on the menu for herself. Elise had been fortunate. Her tech skills had opened doors, and a scholarship had paid for her education. But she knew that for every success story like hers, countless others struggled daily just to get by. As she watched the father carefully portion out their shared meal, making sure his daughter got the larger share, Elise felt a decision forming in her heart. She signaled to the waiter. "Yes, Miss Harrington." "That table by the window, the man and his daughter. I'd like to pay for their meal anonymously. And please tell the kitchen to send them whatever desserts they'd like, on the house." The waiter nodded discreetly. "Of course, Miss Harrington." But as he turned to go, Elise found herself adding, "Wait. There's something else." What happened next would change the course of multiple lives. Elise took out her business card and wrote something on the back. Please give this to the gentleman after they've finished their meal. And make sure the kitchen knows they can order anything they want, not just dessert. Max watched his mother curiously. What did you write, Mom? I wrote that if he's interested in a job, he should call my office on Monday. Max's eyes widened. But you don't even know him. Sometimes, Max, you can tell a lot about a person by how they treat others, especially their children. And sometimes, all people need is a chance. As their own desserts arrived, the promised chocolate lava cake for Max and an espresso for Elise, they watched as the waiter approached the father-daughter table. The man looked confused as the waiter explained that their meal had been taken care of. When the waiter mentioned that they could order anything else they wanted, the girl's face lit up, but her father seemed hesitant, his pride visibly wrestling with the unexpected generosity. After a brief conversation, they did order desserts, one for each of them, and the girl's delight was evident even from across the room. When the waiter discreetly handed over Elise's card, the man read it, then looked around the restaurant with a mixture of confusion and gratitude. Elise had deliberately not identified herself. This wasn't about recognition or praise, it was about something deeper. As they were preparing to leave, Elise noticed the man approaching their table, her business card in hand. She stood to greet him. "Excuse me," he said, his voice steady but uncertain. "I believe I have you to thank for our dinner." Elise smiled warmly. "It was my pleasure. I'm Elise Harrington, and this is my son, Max." "James Carter," he replied, extending his hand. "And my daughter Lily is over there, probably ordering a third dessert now that she knows she can." His smile was self-deprecating but genuine. "Please, join us for a moment," Elise offered, gesturing to the empty chairs at their table. James hesitated, then nodded. "Lily," he called softly, and the girl came over, her face still showing traces of chocolate. As they sat, James seemed to gather his courage. "I appreciate your kindness, Miss Harrington, but I have to ask, why? And this note about a job?" "Call it intuition," Elise replied. "I watched how you were with your daughter, and it told me everything I needed to know about your character. As for the job, my company is always looking for people with integrity." "What do you do, Mr. Carter?" "I'm an engineer, actually. Or I was. I was laid off 6 months ago when my company downsized. I've been doing freelance work and odd jobs since then." Elise felt a spark of interest. "What kind of engineering?" "Mechanical, with a focus on sustainable design. I was working on more efficient heating and cooling systems before the layoff." Elise and Max exchanged a glance. Harrington Innovations had recently expanded into exactly that field. "Mr. Carter, I think we have a lot to talk about. Would you be willing to come to my office on Monday for a proper interview?" James looked stunned. Yes, of course. But this seems too good to be true. Why would you do this for a stranger?" Elise's expression softened. "Because 11 years ago, I was a struggling entrepreneur with a newborn son, and someone took a chance on me. They invested in my company when all I had was a prototype and a dream. Sometimes, all it takes is one person believing in you." As they continued talking, Max and Lily struck up their own conversation, discovering a shared love of science and astronomy. By the time they all left the restaurant, phone numbers had been exchanged, and a tentative friendship had begun to form between the children. Monday morning found James Carter in the lobby of Harrington Innovations, resume in hand and hope in his heart. The interview was rigorous. Elise hadn't built a successful company by making careless decisions, but James's technical knowledge and innovative thinking shone through. By the end of the day, he had been offered a position in the company's research and development department, with a salary that would transform his and Lily's lives. But Elise's act of kindness didn't stop there. Over the following months, she established a foundation dedicated to identifying and supporting single parents with professional potential but limited opportunities. The Harrington Second Chance Initiative provided job training, placement assistance, and childcare support, helping dozens of families break the cycle of financial insecurity. James proved to be an exceptional addition to the company. His perspective as someone who had struggled financially brought valuable insights to Harrington Innovations' affordable housing technology division. Within a year, he was leading a team developing low-cost, energy-efficient home systems for underserved communities. As for Max and Lily, their friendship blossomed. Lily's academic performance, which had suffered during the family's financial hardships, improved dramatically with stability and encouragement. Max, who had sometimes struggled to connect with peers who were interested only in his family's wealth, found in Lily a friend who valued him for himself. 2 years after that fateful dinner, Elise stood on a stage at the opening of the first Harrington Community Housing Complex, affordable, sustainable apartments for working families. James stood beside her as the project lead, his daughter and Max watching proudly from the front row. Sometimes the most significant changes begin with the smallest acts of kindness, Elise said to the gathered crowd. 2 years ago, I witnessed a father's love and determination in the face of hardship, and it inspired me to do more than just build technology, to build opportunities. What had started as a simple gesture in a restaurant had grown into a movement that was changing lives across the city. The ripple effects continued to spread. Families with stable housing and employment created more stable communities, children with secure homes performed better in school, parents with dignified work passed on values of perseverance and hope to the next generation. And it had all begun because Elise Harrington, a billionaire who had never forgotten her own humble beginnings, had taken her son to dinner and seen a single father doing his best for his child. As the years passed, the story of that dinner became something of a legend within Harrington Innovations and the foundation. Elise would sometimes tell new employees or foundation beneficiaries, never underestimate the power of seeing someone, truly seeing them, and recognizing their worth. Max, growing into a thoughtful young man, carried the lesson with him as he prepared to eventually take his place in the company. My mother taught me that our privilege comes with responsibility, he would say. And that sometimes, the most valuable thing we can offer someone isn't money, it's dignity and opportunity. For James and Lily Carter, that night had been the turning point in their lives. James eventually became a partner in the company, his innovations in sustainable housing technology earning him recognition in his own right. Lily, inspired by both her father and Elise, pursued studies in social entrepreneurship, determined to create her own positive impact on the world. On the 5th anniversary of their meeting, the four of them returned to Bellini's for dinner. As they raised their glasses in a toast, Elise reflected on how a simple decision to reach out to a stranger had created such profound change. To seeing each other, she said simply. To seeing each other, they echoed, the words carrying the weight of their shared journey. In a world that often feels divided by wealth and circumstance, their story stands as a reminder that compassion can bridge any gap, and that sometimes, the most extraordinary acts are born from simply recognizing our common humanity. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness matters, and that one person can truly make a difference. Because in the end, we're all just people trying to make our way in the world, and sometimes, all it takes is one person to change everything.